A pleasant day to all. My name is Samuel S. Jr. and I'm from STEM 11 Colonial. And I'm here to discuss about the topic American regime in the Philippines. So ready yourselves and let us begin our discussion. Philippine literary production during the American period in the Philippines was spurred by two significant developments in education and culture. One is the introduction of pre-public instruction for all children of school age, and two, the use of English as a medium of instruction in all levels of education in public schools. Many Filipinos started writing again, and the nationalism of the people remained undaunted. Filipino writers went into all forms of literature like news reporting, poetry, stories, plays, essays, and novels. Their writing clearly demonstrate their love of the country and their longings for independence. In a way, we can say that we can trace the beginnings of the Philippine literature in English to the coming of the Americans. For this purpose, we can divide this period into three time frames, namely, first is the period of reorientation in 1838 to 1910. The second is the period of imitation in 1910 to 1924. And lastly, the third is the period of self-discovery and growth in 1925 to 1941. The first period that we are about to discuss is the period of reorientation in 1898 to 1910. And in the August 13, 1898, it is when the American occupied the Philippines. And by the 90s, English had come to be used as a medium of instruction in public schools. And by the 1908, the primary and intermediate grades were using English. It was also about this time when the UP, the forerunner in the use of English in higher education, was founded. And the second is the period of imitation in 1910 to 1924. In 1919, the UP College Folio published the literary compositions of the first Filipino writers in English. They were the pioneers of short story writing. They were then grouping their way into imitating American and British models, which resulted in a stilted, artificial, and unnatural style lacking vitality and spontaneity. The Philippine Collegian is the official student publication of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and one of the only three Tier 3 level campus publications in the Philippines released weekly. And lastly is the period of self-discovery and growth in 1925 to 1941. By this time, Filipino writers had acquired the mastery of English writing. They now confidently and competently wrote on a lot of subjects. Although the old-time favorites of love and youth persisted, they went into all forms of writing like novels and slang. And now, I'm about to discuss to you about some of the Filipino writers during the American regime in the Philippines. I'm also gonna mention some works of them, so listen up and take note if you want to. And the first Filipino writer is Maximo Cala in 1891 to 1955. He studied at the Philippine Normal School and the University of the Philippines, wherein he became the editor of Colegio Folio, the first school paper in UP. And he wrote Usapin ng mga Pilipino in 1915, the development of the Philippine politics in 1926, and lastly, the Filipino Rebel, a romance of the American occupation of the Philippines in 1931. And the second Filipino writer is Faustino S. Aguilar in 1888 to 1955. He was one of the first novelists in the Philippines to explore and present social realism through literature. Pinaglahuan was Faustino response against the imperialism and colonialism. And the third Filipino writer is Paz Marquez Benitez in 1894 to 1983. He authored the first Filipino modern English language short story called Dead Stars, published in the Philippine Herald in 1925. Benitez was among the first generation Filipinos trained in the American education system, which used in English as a medium of instruction. And the fourth Filipino writer is Zolio Galang in 1895 to 1959. A self-starter, he learned typing stenography in English and Spanish all by himself, took special courses at the University of the Philippines in 1925, and then went to Columbia University for further studies in literature. He is also credited with writing the first English language novel written by a Filipino called A Child of Sorrow, which was later made into a movie in 1930. And the fifth Filipino writer is Amado Vera Hernandez in 1903 to 1970, a Filipino writer and a labor leader who was known for his criticism of social injustice in the Philippines, and was later imprisoned for his involvement in the communist movement. He was also the central figure in a landmark legal case that took 13 years to settle, while being a reporter, columnist, and an editor of several newspapers and magazines. He also honed his poetic craft. And the sixth Filipino writer is Manuel L. in 1911 to 1944. He authored the short story How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife, which won first prize in the Commonwealth Literary Contest in 1940. He also graduated from the University of the Philippines first class in 1912 with a Bachelor of Arts degree. And the seventh Filipino writer is Juan Laya in 1911 to 1952. He was awarded a Commonwealth Prize for his English novel called His Native Soil. He was also the founder of Inang Lupa Publishing and was also active in textbook publishing in the 1950s. He also wrote many stories and novels about his country and native land. And the last and eighth Filipino writer is Wilfredo Guerrero in 1911 to 1995. He became the director of Filipino Players from 1941 to 1947. He also wrote over 100 plays. 41 of these plays have been published. His published and unpublished plays have either been broadcast over the radio or staged in various parts of the Philippines.
So we'll now proceed to the elements of a short story. The first is the character, the individual or entities in the story who drive the plot. They can be protagonists, antagonists, or supporting character. The next is the setting, the time and place where the story unfolds. It establishes the context and atmosphere of the narrative. Next is the plot, the sequence of events that make up the storyline. It includes the introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. The next is the theme, the central idea or message explored in the story. It's the underlying concept that the narrative conveys about life, human nature, or a specific topic. The next is the point of view, the perspective from which the story is told. It can be first person, second person, or third person. So we'll now proceed to the parts of a newspaper. The first is general news. This contains the most important news here and abroad. It is usually from the front page of the newspaper. The second is local and foreign news section. The local news section about news outlet covers stories and events that's specific to a particular area such as city or region, while the foreign news section covers stories and events occur outside of the area, often on an international level. The next is the editorial page. It tackles recent events and terms to accumulate viewpoints based on objective analysis of happenings and conflicting opinions. The next is the sports page, the page of a newspaper that is devoted to coverage of sport events. And the next is the business and finance section, the act of securing economic support to supply funds for your business expenses. And the next is the classified ads section, a form of online event advertising that appears under a particular category in a publication. And the next is the entertainment section. This section features articles, reviews, and news related to movies, music, television, theater, and other forms of entertainment. And the next is the home and culture section. This section provides ideas about budgeting, food preparation, house improvement, and proper plant care. The next is the society page. The society page of a newspaper is largely or entirely devoted to our social and cultural events, gossip to the location covered. The next is the weather section. Provides the information about the current and upcoming weather condition, often accompanied by graphics and charts. And the next is the travel and tourism section. It provides the location where you want to go and shows information about the place you're going to and some travel tips. And the last is the announcement and obituary page. Obituaries are tribute to the individuals who have recently passed away and providing details about their life and achievement and funeral origin.
And that's all. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you learned something throughout our discussion about the American regime in the Philippines. And once again, I'm Samuel S. Jr. and from STEM 11 Colonial News.